In this video, I'll be offering you my thoughts on the latest in the Air series from Viltrox, the 25mm f1.7. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. In this video we'll be taking a look at the third lens in Viltrox's Air series, the 25mm f1.7. Now with this lens Viltrox has completed the collection of the sort of basic 3' lenses that they did with their f1.4 series, and this is the widest of the 3 Air lenses so far, and while it's a little bit tighter than the traditional 23mm lens that we see on APS-C sensors, it's not a huge difference and it fills that role really well. Now just like the other 2 lenses in the series, the 25mm f1.7 is tiny, it's light, and it shares the same filter size of 52mm. In fact, with all 3 in my bag, these lenses are so similar that I kept having to check which one I was pulling out by reading the text on the side of the lens. Now, it's really great to see a set of lenses that's been created with a consistent design language, and hopefully we'll see some more lenses in this series coming soon. Before we jump in and talk about the lens though, the usual disclaimer applies here. Viltrox did send me this lens over for testing and I do get to keep it. No money has changed hands and I wasn't asked for anything other than a timely, honest review on this channel to go with the launch of the lens and perhaps a couple of images that they can share on their social media to promote the launch as well. Now, I've had the lens for about a month now and I've been able to take it with me on a couple of international trips, so I've got a good handle on how the lens feels to use, how it works, and how it compares to others in the market. Now, all thoughts in this video are my own, and Viltrox will be watching this video for the first time with you guys after the launch. Just like the 35 and 56mm lenses in this series, this one feels really well built and like it's going to last a while. Now, just like those lenses, it has a little bit of a plasticky feel when compared to some of the more expensive lenses on the market, but it doesn't feel low quality in any way, and that's really great to see for the asking price of $176. Now, I'd actually go so far as to say that it feels better built than a lot of Fujifilm's XC lenses. Now, much like the 35mm lens, Viltrox has included a good-sized lens hood with this one that offers effective protection from knocks as well as stray light. Unlike the 56mm lens in the series, I take this one with me and I leave it on the lens at all times. Now, keeping in line with the other Air lenses, this one doesn't have any weather sealing at all and it doesn't have a physical aperture ring. Now, the latter is a little bit of a disappointment again, as I love working with a physical aperture ring, but we expect that in this series of lenses now. As we expect from Viltrox at this point, autofocus on the 25mm is swift and accurate, and just like the other 2 lenses in the series, it's helped along by the fact that it's just basically moving tiny little elements around inside the lens, and just like those lenses, there is a small audible jump each time it focuses, and it's not really loud enough for anyone next to you to hear it, but in a quiet environment you are definitely going to notice it yourself. At times I notice that this lens could struggle a little more in dim light than some other lenses, for example like Viltrox's own 27mm f1.2. Now this could be down to the fact that the camera is not getting quite as much light through that smaller aperture, but in any scene where there's enough light or enough contrast, it does a really great job, as you can see here. Overall though, it locks on quickly and quietly when using AFS and keeps up well with moving subjects in AFC. I haven't seen any missed focus at all when tracking moving subjects. The center of the frame is a little soft when the lens is used wide open. Now it's not bad, but it's not as good as something like Fujifilm's XF23mm 1.4 RWR or the TT Artisan 23mm 1.8 that I recently tested. Once you stop it down to f2 though, it sharpens up quite a bit and it gets really good by f2.8 and f4. This is really great to see from yet another tiny lens, and in real world shooting, you're never likely to notice that slight softness when using the lens wide open. The corners are quite a bit softer than the center of the frame at all apertures. They still hold some detail though, and they're not bad by any means. They don't improve too much as the lenses stop down, and they never really get to the point where I would call them great. Still, I haven't noticed it being an issue in the field. Coma and astigmatism are very well controlled from what I've seen, and I really can't see them being an issue for any type of photography. A little green and blue chromatic aberration can be seen, but overall it's really well corrected. It shows up around some extremely harshly lit out of focus areas, but it isn't noticeable in most day-to-day shooting. This lens produces a deep vignette of around 1 1/3 stops when used wide open. It improves slightly by f2 and is almost completely gone by f2.8. Overall, this is a very manageable amount of vignetting for such a tiny lens, and it can be corrected for easily if you need to. Looking first at specular highlights, we see perfectly round bokeh in the center of the frame and a little cat's eye towards the corners. There are some onion rings to be seen as well, but they're not awful and I haven't really noticed the effect anywhere outside of direct testing. The bokeh balls remain fairly round until f4 and f5.6, where they begin to take on the shape of the aperture blades more significantly. In real-world use though, the bokeh is nice and smooth without any jitteriness to distract from the subject. Occasionally a little bit of that CA shows up around the high contrast edges, but you really need to zoom in to see it. So all in all, there's nothing too special about this bokeh, but nothing too distracting either. It does the job that it needs to do and allows you to focus on image making rather than exploiting quirks of the lens or avoiding its pitfalls. Sunstars begin to show slightly at f2.8, but it's not until f8 that they really become defined. The great thing is though, because of the better flare and ghosting resistance, you can actually now use this lens effectively with the sun in the frame to create sunstars. During the couple of moments of sunlight that I actually had while testing this lens, I did some quick and dirty flare and ghosting tests. I couldn't see any of the telltale signs of the 35mm and 56mm air lens designs here. Lights at the edge of the frame tended to have very little effect on the image, which is great to see. With the bright afternoon sun directly in the frame, we can see a little bit of ghosting here and a hint of contrast reducing flare. Overall, this lens is the best controlled for flare that I've seen on any Viltrox lens to date. My time with this lens has mostly been spread across a couple of days cycling, as well as a family trip to Hoi An and Singapore. The weather has not been kind to me most days, and I haven't had a lot of nice light to work in, but I've still got a good handle on how it performs either way. I didn't have any issues with the lens during the rainy days or high humidity of Southeast Asia, but I was definitely more careful with it than I would have been if I'd been working with a weather-sealed lens. This one spent a lot more time under an umbrella or under my shirt when the rain started coming down even just a little. On my first few outings with the lens, I found myself having to take an extra step back for each of my compositions while I got used to the focal length. Now, it's not a huge difference from 23mm, but that's a focal length that I've worked with for years now, and I know exactly where I need to be while using the lens. Once I got used to it though, the lens got out of the way and I was able to use it without worrying at all that it was delivering the images I'd be happy with. The autofocus and sharpness are very good with this lens, which puts it out of mind and allows you to focus on what's important, the photography at hand. Taking that one step back when compared to a 23mm lens does mean that you're losing the effect of perspective distortion ever so slightly. Now, it's not a massive difference, but it does mean that you need to get ever so slightly closer in order to realize that perspective distortion effect. And the lens is also ever so slightly easier to achieve the look of a quote-unquote normal lens with. Now, it's not a massive difference, and most of the time you won't even notice it, but when you are directly comparing these lenses, you will see the difference. When paired with the tiny X-T50, which for those of you who watch my review, failed again on this trip by the way, this makes for a great little package that barely weighs more than the X100V and has better autofocus and a slightly faster aperture. Now, on the days when I was actually able to use that pairing, I really enjoyed the portability of it. For those of you looking to have a really small package that doesn't draw attention to itself, pairing this lens with something like one of the XE bodies would be a really great option in my opinion. Anyone familiar with my work will know that I'm a sucker for a fast aperture lens. I love the combination of beautiful light and extremely shallow depth of field. So when it comes to an APS-C sensor, that means finding the fastest lenses available. Now, probably one drawback for me with this lens was that it wasn't quite fast enough for my liking at times. A shallow depth of field is definitely possible with this lens, but I found that backgrounds don't get quite far enough out of focus for my taste at most working distances. That's where Viltrox's 27mm f1.2 really shines. On that note, I was asked in a comment to compare this lens with the Viltrox 27mm f1.2 when I made this review, and while they have a similar focal length, they are absolutely worlds apart in how they feel to use. Now, I'm not talking about the obvious size and weight difference here, but the way that the images render. The 27mm f1.2 is tack sharp and has razor thin depth of field even at normal working distances. It also has an incredibly deep vignette that when combined with those other two characteristics provides a unique rendering that inspires me to make images. The 25mm on the other hand is a bit more generic in the way the images feel. Now, that's not to say that it doesn't have a very good image quality, but it doesn't stand out in the way that the 27mm does. I'd say that if you're going to be stopping the lenses down at all, the 25mm is a great option and will save you carrying around that hulking beast that is the 27mm. Will also save you opening your wallet quite so far. If you're looking to shoot wide open and you want something a little special from the rendering of your lens, the 27mm is definitely the way to go. Now, I had both of these lenses on my trips to Singapore and Hoi An, and I found that whenever I came across a scene that really jumped out to me, my mind instantly asked me to switch to the 27mm f1.2 just to add a little something extra to the frame. Otherwise though, I've had absolutely no issues with this lens and the way that it's performed. It's done a great job and I came home with some images that I was really happy from it. You can't ask for more than that from a budget lens. This third installment in the Viltrox Air series is, in my opinion, the best one they've made to date. The image quality is really good both technically and creatively, and Viltrox has done a really great job of coating this lens to resist against flare and ghosting, while still keeping the images sharp and the bokeh nice and smooth. Now, as a basic introduction to this focal length, I can't see any reason not to recommend this lens really highly. If you don't need weather sealing or a physical aperture ring, this would even be my choice over Fujifilm's own XF23mm f2. Also, if you're still waiting on Fujifilm to ever produce enough X106s for you to get your hands on one, this lens, paired with something like an XE body, might be just the ticket. Now, I really don't have all that much more to say about this lens. Viltrox have done a really great job with it. What I do hope, though, is that they don't stop at these three focal lengths with this series. It would be really great to see something like a 14mm, 16mm, maybe even 18mm to satisfy all those people who love Fujifilm's f2 lens, as well as maybe a couple of longer lenses like, say, a 75mm or a 90mm. Even if all of these things aren't the same size and shape as these lenses, it would be great to see sort of lightweight options with fast apertures. Now, please let me know what you guys would like to see in the comments below. Now that Viltrox has this lens, TT Artisan has theirs, and Makey has theirs on the roadmap as well, I'm looking forward to doing a full roundup of, say, 23mm-ish lenses in the future. To see that, as well as my upcoming 35mm lens roundup, do get subscribed and turn on notifications. For now though, let me know if you have any questions about this lens in the comments below, and enjoy the slideshow. Thanks again for watching.